Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Mirror Dungeon solo video. Today we'll be using the defensive wall, Zwei Faust. Just like the most recent Zwei identities, she focused primarily on buffing her defense level as opposed to any other specific status effect. However, unlike those other identities, she doesn't benefit nearly as much from it. The most she can gain from having extra defense level is some bonus clash power, and that's basically it. This essentially turns her into a pure support for the other Zwei identities, with her being able to give them more defense level, allowing them to perform better than they would normally. Her supporting capabilities don't stop there though. On top of the defense level, she also has the perfect skill sin types in order to fuel the best support ego in the game, Fluid Sac. As long as she is on your team and you have Fluid Sac, you can always guarantee that you'll be able to heal. Because she's one of the few identities who doesn't fit into any of the ego gift archetypes, we essentially have two choices when it comes to our starting gifts. We can either choose the slash gifts for a little extra clash power, or poise to turn her into a poise identity. You can turn any identity into a poise identity as long as you either get Emerald Elytra or Pendant of Nostalgia when you have a Gloom skill. Because we have a Gloom skill, I decided to turn her into a poise identity and pick the cigarette holder and the old wooden doll for our starting gifts. We choose the Outcast for our first floor, and are up against the Doomsday Calendar for the first boss. Without yet having any poise generating gifts, we are essentially stuck playing without any bonus modifiers, and thus this fight, while not particularly difficult, does take a bit of time. The reason for this is because none of our skills are capable of one-shotting the dolls. Our skill 1 actually does the most damage to them, with it being an envy skill, but because it's a skill 1, it doesn't do nearly enough damage and we need at least 2 attacks to take out any doll. As soon as we can start attacking the calendar, we pretty much ignore all of the dolls as they don't do much damage anyway and chip away at it until we can finally destroy it. We take coffee and cranes for our reward before heading to the automated factory for the next floor. Here we buy Grey Coat, Eclipse of Scarlet Moths, Devil's Share, and an extra skill 3 before making it to the boss against the Pink Shoes. The main reason this fight could pose a challenge is the fact that Faust is fatal to lust damage. We could easily turn it off by just using a single ego, however being a relatively tanky identity plus being resistant to the other damage type of blunt, it's not much of an issue and we can more or less ignore any damage we take. The big threat itself is entirely the robot. The other two enemies don't do nearly as much damage, and with them both being fatal to slash damage, we could pretty much kill them all whenever we feel like. The robot though, being as tanky as it is, takes a lot of effort to take down. At the very least, we are more than capable of clashing with its big attacks, as Faust Skill 3 has pretty damn good clash power.
개체로부터 기이한 태세 그원
제약 개체가
그원 적대 사례가 배제했습니다.
직원들이 개체를 제압.
그원 인적진 적대 사례가 배제했습니다. 단순히
세상의 상태가 안 좋은 것 같아. 이걸 잘 이용하면 좋은 결과로 이어질 수 있을 거야.
적대 사례가 배제했습니다.
승객이 딱콩 한 방 먹였어.
We take the 4-leaf clover for our reward and receive Bloody Gadget as a bonus before heading into To Be Crushed for the next floor. Here we fuse Emerald Elytra and Finifugality, finally turning us into a Poise identity, before making it to the boss against the Steam Transport Machine.
여기다가
Who's ready for a fight that takes 30 minutes? I'm just kidding, it only took 10. But in all seriousness, the Transport Machine is just such an awkward fight. I'd say pretty much any identity would struggle against this guy, and it's not because of his whole I don't have any weaknesses gimmick, although that is certainly a part of it. It's because he inflicts the single most amount of paralysis out of any boss, except the Rosespanner Workshop. He inflicts a minimum of 6 paralysis on the first turn, and thus makes clashing on every subsequent turn incredibly difficult. You pretty much need a 3-coin skill to be able to break through it, which we do have, and luckily are able to win all of our clashes despite the paralysis. As soon as you make it out of the first couple of turns and gain enough skill slots to avoid the paralyze, he becomes a lot easier. Still though, he remains as one of the single most annoying bosses in the game, as it's very difficult to actually beat him correctly. He alternates between gaining fragility and protection every other turn, and when his body is broken, all of his resistances change to 0.5. This makes it so you want to stagger his body when he has protection, so the next turn you can dump as much damage as physically possible into him, and hopefully kill him before his resistances change. This becomes significantly harder to do solo, as it's difficult to time the stagger properly, and with him being pretty easy to stagger in the first place, you usually end up doing it when you have less than full skill slots. As long as you are capable of clashing, it's not that big of a deal, but ultimately it means that there's very little that can be done to avoid his gimmick, and so we are forced to trudge through his 0.5 resistances. We take the nebulizer for a reward and head into Devoured Gluttony for the next floor. Here we buy Illusory Hunt, Resolution, and Clear Mirror Calm Water while also fusing Pendant of Nostalgia before making it to the boss against the Ambeline Pearl.
좋아.
The only thing to really worry about with this guy is the fact that he does gluttony damage, but a single use of Fluid Sac immediately turns off our weakness to that. This boss is pretty easy thanks to the healing from Greycoat, but mostly it's because of Clear Mirror Calm Water. I was still a bit on the fence as to whether I wanted to take it or not, but decided to do it because Faust isn't actually a Poise identity, and I randomly got it in a shop, so might as well. However, I don't think I'll be taking it anymore when I'm using a real Poise identity. Is it as powerful as Thrill and Glimpse of Flames? No, but it is certainly up there. It is single-handedly capable of turning Zwei Faust, an identity who's not even a Poise identity, into one of the strongest 3-star Poise identities in the game. I never even upgraded it, and it's still capable of doing that. Needless to say, I'll probably only take it when I'm using a really bad identity who doesn't fit into any other archetypes.
어제의 실력을 보지. 종이 하나가 떨어졌는데 이제 좀 수월해지겠어.
이런 문제는
개체에서 일격을 가는 데 성공했습니다.
고맙습니다.
저거 봐, 쟤 휘청거리고 있다.
고맙습니다. 움직이지 못하겠죠.
개체를 구성하고 있는 부위 중 하나가 파괴되었습니다. 이 틈을 파고들어 돌격하고
적대스키가 배제했습니다.
이것이 바로 정보의 힘입니다.
We take today's expression as our reward and head into Sinking Deluge for the final floor. Here we buy Special Contract and Imposed Weight before heading into the final boss against the Dream-Devouring Silk Current.
사실 이런
The more I fight this guy, the more I think he's really not that bad. In fact, his fight kind of reminds me of Cromer's in a weird sort of way, by which I mean they both have a very specific requirement in order to beat the fight, and once you do, you basically won. For the Slit Current, you've got to clash with his Blind Obsession skill a single time, and once you do, you win. The only reason it's any difficult is because it's a pretty strong skill, and the single paralysis he inflicts makes clashing with egos somewhat unreliable. A pretty consistent way to beat it though is to reset until he uses it with his body instead of his fluorescent part. This allows you to clash with his other skills before Blind Obsession and thus removes the paralyze before it actually matters. I get this luck, but instead of clashing with an ego to guarantee success, I use a skill 3 because I can. I end up using an ego anyway to remove the paralyze, and hit the flotsome at the same time to guarantee I don't need to worry about clashing with Blind Obsession ever again. As soon as we get through the second turn, we've won. The Slit Current is, at its core, a gimmick fight, and that gimmick is entirely isolated within the second turn.
부위 하나가 파괴되었어. 이대로 똑같이만 한다면 모든 부위를 파괴시킬 수 있겠지? 승리를 딱 해준 방법이 있어. 개체들의 체력이 많이 깎여나갔어. 괴로워하는 게 느껴지지 않아? 완벽한 한방. 시원한걸?
효율적인 배치로 개체를 터뜨렸습니다. 고맙습니다. 이 지역에서 예상되는 문제는 전부 해결했네요. 오늘 순찰은 이걸로 끝내죠.
And that's how I soloed Mirror Dungeon 4 hard using only Zwei Faust. She's fine for a 2-star. She doesn't really do anything that impressive other than fuel fluid sac and supporting the others via identities. In fact, I'd say that's probably the only real way you can actually use her. I mean, her skill 3 does have good clash power, but other than that, she doesn't really do anything special. A pretty average identity all around. Anyway, that's it from me. Like and subscribe to not miss next time where we'll be using this character. Goodbye.